Roll call, Madam Clerk.
Okay, Commissioner Zacharias?
Here.
Commissioner Rooney?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Lopez? Mayor McQueen-LaJean?
Here.
CEO Port Director Kristen Dekas? And City Manager Vega.
Here.
Great, thank you. We'll now hear public comments pertaining to any items not on the agenda. Madam Clerk, do we have any public comments?
No public comments.
Thank you. So we'll move to discussion. We'll now consider the minutes for approval. May I have a motion and a second to approve the October 23rd, 2024 minutes?
Motion to approve?
Second.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, roll call.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Hearing none, motion passes unanimously.
Great, thank you. For the next item, Mr. City Manager and Ms. Dekas, I believe, will provide us some updates on the Community Benefit Fund projects. Mr. Vega, would you please begin?
Sure. And I actually spoke to Kristen just before the meeting, and she's going to kick off with the presentation on the history of the Community Benefit Fund.
It's just because we're a new body and kicking off the first meeting and we have a new player, we thought we'd just walk down memory lane just quickly to give some reminders of how the community fund came to be. When we did our most recent Washington trip, I think this was our slogan, there's no commerce without community and there's no community without commerce. And we actually post this saying on our website and then have a link to the Community Benefit Fund for public consumption so they can understand what the Community Benefit Fund is and then how the funds have been programmed. So that's up on our site that we're welcome to get you links to so you can see that as well. I think we're going to update it. We have it with the new most recent projects, but it gives a nice summary for the community. So with that, we'll jump in. Just a reminder, I mean, sometimes marriages have problems, right? And we had a small problem in 2013 where there was a legal challenge against the port and our calculation of gross operating revenues, and that led to litigation between the port and the city that went on for about a period of 2 years. And after some court cases, we were in court, and after some of the dispute, I think we came to the conclusion that reconciliation was the best pathway forward and not to fight in the courts. And so we put together a settlement agreement, and that is the 2015 settlement agreement. And what the agreement did was, one, it remedied the concerns with the calculations of gross operating revenues so that historic disputes would be put to rest. We wouldn't argue over gross operating revenues sharing, which date back to the agreements that we have, the 1983, 1987, and the 1995. It was agreed that we would no longer dispute those issues that we had in court. We also did a transaction with the NCL property, and we paid the city $1 million to get out of the lease that you had for that property, truncate it shortly, because at the time there was a tremendous financial need at the city, so the $1 million was a way to get you back on the positive side of the books. And the whole idea behind the settlement agreement was to kind of come out with some wins and some very positive collaborative spirit, because we had been fighting. It was ugly in the newspaper, to be very honest. And we wanted to put that all behind us and move forward in a spirit of collaboration and good spirits and good faith and have a positive working professional relationship. So we did we agreed not to argue about the revenue sharing agreements. We did the transaction on the property, which was good for us to get space, good for you to get financial assistance that was needed at the time. And then we thought, well, let's do something neat. Let's do something cool. And we developed the Community Benefit Fund. So this is a process that would bring the port and the city together so we could do projects to, one, improve our relationship, work together, and also do some good in the community. And so that's how the community benefit evolved, in the spirit of collaboration, working together and moving forward with a really positive partnership. So the logistics of it, if we make more than $13 million in revenue, $100,000 will go into the Community Benefit Fund, and then it will be adjusted by CPI. So I think I'll jump to the next slide to go.
Wait a second.
Yep.
I just want to go back a second.
Oopsie. Can I?
I just want to clarify, because it's been stated that the city sold land back to the port, which that is indeed, that's not true.
Yeah,
So the land transaction we're talking about here, this was a lease that the city had with the port for this parcel at the very end there. So it was a lease buyout. It wasn't a property exchange in any fashion.
I
Okay.
hadn't heard that before, but thanks for.
Okay. All right.
Yep.
I just want to
I had
clarify.
heard that it was a purchase.
Yeah, one of your council members has said it in public, and that's why I wanted to just clarify that it was always owned by the port. It was leased to the city. And so we just bought you out of that lease
Yeah.
for another year or two that was remaining.
And the commissioner, that's correct. In fact, we did a joint appraisal on that too, to come to what that payout should be. And it actually added, because of the value of the lease, 2 years on the back end of the revenue sharing agreements. So they aren't sunsetting in 2034, they're sunsetting in 2036.
Thank you.
So some of the process behind the CBF, and I have a little slide that kind of puts it in a picture format, but the settlement agreement asked that the two bodies stand, the Port City Committee that's meeting today, so it included 2 members from the city, 2 members from the port, and then the city manager and the port CEO. It requires that we meet within 180 days of the next fiscal year. So it's you're taking, like this year, we'll take 2025 funds and grow them for 2026. The projects that we did last year, we used 2024 and programmed them for 2025. So it takes the year prior funding based on the success of making that earning benchmark of over $13 million. And so when the clock ticks at the fiscal year, which is July 1, and that gives us a 180-day timeline to come up with projects of mutual agreement to process with that prior year's $100,000 plus CPI. I'm going to jump into the next slide because it's just a little easier to talk about the process than the text there. So these were the projects that are actually named in the settlement agreement as eligible projects: shoreline protection, community development, opportunistic endeavors, and other projects. And it was placed this way to give some flexibility to move forward with projects that might be relevant in a given time. So if you actually name projects back in 2015, today they may not be relevant. So it was trying to give some flexibility and give the leaders in the room that are with us today the opportunity to really figure out what would be the best investment with these funds. So here's a little better visual of how the process works in terms of that 180-day timeline. So typically, we'll start talking about the next year's funds in a May meeting, and it would start with this body. We could go back to our mutual boards and say, what would you like us to bring to the table? And we'll just start having those discussions. And then in July, based on some of the feedback, the city manager and myself would start trying to formalize those ideas with the goal of maybe bringing them back to the boards in September for board vote. So each board has to have a majority vote for the projects to move forward. And if we don't have consensus and we want to come back to the drawing board, one board didn't have that majority vote, we'll come back to this body, rethink it, and then go back to our boards until we get that majority vote. If we were unable to come to agreement within that 180-day window, then the funding will just roll over into the next fiscal year for discussion. And after 3 years, if we are unable to find consensus, then the funds would be divided by 2, and 50% would go back to the city and 50% would go back to the port to spend at their own discretion. So that's really the process of the CBF funds and how it works. And today, I'm pleased to report that the great work of our CFOs have reconciled all past funding for CBF. So there's no... We're in a very good place there, and we do have some projects that are active from last year's investments, and then we have projects that are active from the year before that. So I'm just going to pass these along so you can see what is currently in play, but it's not trying to reconcile funds. There are projects that are moving forward that have been voted by the board, and they're just in progress. So I'll pass this down so you can just see what's in front of us. And James, I kick it over to you if you want to add anything.
I've only got one other slide. and that is probably the same information being handed out. But it's essentially, so that was the history of the Community Benefit Fund and the background on it and the big picture. But what does that actually turn into each year? This is the list of projects from last year that were approved by the Joint City and Port Committee. And so there's some variance each year. Some of the projects seem to carry over, but not many, or not all of them. But this is an example of, in a given year, what projects end up being funded through this process. And so I think I wanted to include this mostly just as sort of like a thinking cap exercise of, so we can start thinking as we prepare for the next couple months. These are the types of projects that have been funded through the Community Benefit Fund in the last year. So that's all I have on this item.
I do have a technical question. Can I ask? Of course. Technical question is, for example, on the subtotal FY 2023. So from 23 to 24, we had set aside $50,000 for a grant writer. Does that mean that those funds have to have been used in 24? 23, 24, or
No.
is that an ongoing?
No, there's no sunsetting after a vote has been made. Nothing that sets any provisions of that nature in the settlement agreement.
Oh, okay.
But if the funds aren't used, it can be reprogrammed with the approval of both boards.
Of course.
Okay.
Okay.
So I'm not sure if there are questions on projects. You want to, James, maybe just quickly tell them what's going on with the run?
Yeah, so the
Yeah.
next one coming up, and probably actually this year, it's probably our biggest sort of joint event that is run by the city and the port, because a lot of these are sponsorship of other organizations' events, but this one is really purely ours, and it's the we had identified it at the time as the annual Run for Your Heart, but it's sort of pivoted into the Sea Splash Color Dash, I think is what it's called this year, which is the first ever, first ever 5K color run that we're holding in Port Hueneme. 5K, which we expect to have over 600 runners. We could have gotten more, but we're actually, the limit is our size, I think. But 600 runners. We're doing for the first time on top of that a 1K for kids, and we expect to have a few hundred kids doing the 1K, and then also the Health and Wellness Fair that'll take place in Parking Lot C, which was a pretty good health and wellness fair last year. That is coming up on March 22nd. Normally I'd plug signing up for it, but I think it's full, so we don't have to try to beg people to come. So, but that's coming up on March 22nd. So,
The only thing I would add to that,
Yeah.
James, is that our two teams, this is a little different because it's the city and the port
Yeah.
working on something together. So it wasn't like the port funding a city program or the city funding a port program. So we had a very successful joint meeting of all the staff between our two agencies that were working on these CBF projects, and they came together and they put this together in collaboration. So it really truly has the spirit of a joint city port initiative. So it was very successful.
So can I go back, 'cause I'm sorry, I just want to make sure I understand this, and hopefully it'll bring some clarification to Council Member Lopez. So on the projects that are 22, 20, 22, 23, I saw the 22, 22 at the top. Can we go down them and say, okay, this one's already been used, this one's still outstanding, this one's already been used?
As I understand it, these are the ones that are still all in pace, correct, Austin? Austin just put this together. So these are the ones that haven't been billed. So they've been approved by the boards, but some of them we're still putting together. We're still working on the statute by way of example.
Yes.
So that's the
Yes.
balance of funding for the statute. The mural project, James may have a better sense of where it is, but it hasn't been invoiced as of yet. The DC meeting we're looking to do, if we want to talk about that a little bit, I talked to
Next
John and
item.
Karaokas, our consultants, and they recommended 2 weeks after Labor Day as being a good time to go to Washington, but we have to make sure that works for everybody's schedules.
So for my
Yeah,
simple brain here, can we go down each one and say still outstanding?
they're all
Mr.
still outstanding.
Oh, they're all still outstanding?
Yeah.
Commissioner Zacharias, I'm sorry, can you speak a little bit more into the mic?
So they're still all outstanding then?
Yes, these are the ones that are in play now.
Okay,
Yes.
so that's what so these on this sheet that says 23, 24, I think the question that you're making Ms. Zacharias, is about these. These even 23, 24?
The source of the funding on the ones that say 23 was from year 23. The source of the funding is from year 24. And yes, I guess you could say we're a little bit behind
Okay,
on
so-
some of the, we're about $118,000 worth of projects from the year prior that are still in play.
Okay, so I think the question is, these have all been done?
So I
Some
think
of them.
we can
looks
go
like-
through.
And I think
Yeah.
that's kind of
Yeah.
what we
No,
want
we,
to
we,
know.
no, we can talk through and give you a status. They're
exactly.
on here because we haven't spent the money.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So like, for example,
Mm-hmm.
scholarships. I know we spent some money, but not all money. So how
Yeah,
much
about
money
half
is
of it.
still there?
Yeah, about
So
half of
that'll
it.
help
And
clarify.
So we'll walk through it. So the first one, there's 40,000 left for the statue. And James, you jump in when you have the update, and I'll jump on. The statue is on its way. What was the original amount for the statue? Was it close to 100,000, Austin?
Mr. Yang, Mr. Austin, can you sit
I'll
up
repeat.
here? Thank you.
She's a traffic cop.
And just make sure the mic is on.
On top of my head, first approval was $50,000, and we had another $50,000 approval, so total of $100,000.
So the $40,000 balance is going to be used to build the platform, to lay the statue, and then put the printing on the statue and set up the area, which will be in front of our 105 building, and have the statue looking at the Maritime Museum. So that balance of funding is going to be to stand it and create kind of a destination, if you will, so people can come look at the statue, and then we're going to put a bench there and some kiosks so people can learn the history of the Bard family in the port. So that's the update. Do you want to give an update on the mural?
Yeah, the mural's actually been completed. We haven't done the grand opening yet because the library is under construction. The mural's on the library. And so we expect to be scheduling a grand opening, and we will, of course, be inviting the council and the board. Probably, I'm speaking for the county a little bit because it's timed with the county's grand opening, but we are hearing in the next month or two we should be able to have the grand opening of the mural. But if you drive by right now, you can actually see it. It's just
It's
behind
beautiful.
construction fence. Yeah.
So I think that's a matter of invoicing then.
It's just the invoicing going through the
Okay.
process. But so that is complete and the money is spent, whether or not
Yeah.
we've actually reimbursed.
Yes, if I may, I want to add one more thing. This is the list based on cash basis of accounting. So even if work is done, if we haven't paid the cash, it's still in the list as unpaid.
Yeah, so
undone.
it's still in the bank, in other words. The funding's still in the account. The DC Coalition, if you recall, we were going to go last year, and then the election hit, and we just didn't know the dynamics of what was going to happen in DC. So we called the trip off last year, so that funding is still on the books, and it was revoted next year. So when we do next year, we probably don't have to vote that trip because we have one already programmed.
Okay.
Scholarships,
We've done half of them. I think we issued 4 or 5 of the 10, or 4 or 5 scholarships. We have funding for 4 or 5 more, and we just announced today, or actually Friday last week, that we are doing the next round of scholarship applications. So those will be going through the process.
So what dollar amount is,
Those are $1,000 scholarships per student.
so we've already used how much?
I think it's 4,000.
4,000? Okay.
so I've done 4,000, so we just need to get billed that, and we'll
Mhm.
reconcile the bank account.
Yeah, the good news there is last year it was sort of a rushed process. This year we are starting at a time that makes more sense than starting over the summer for high school kids. So we actually had a meeting with the guidance counselor from the high school, I think, who said he's gonna get us some applicants this year. So
So I just want to make sure I'm clear. I remember that we had set a dollar amount aside,
Mhm.
and in that dollar amount, it was X for the putting on of the event and X for scholarships.
Mhm.
So there's remaining $6,000 in that account. Is that also still including X dollar amount for the event and
So-
X dollar amount for scholarships?
So I believe we had set aside, I think it was 8,000 for scholarships, 2,000 for an event. And then, so we gave the scholarships. It was over the summer. We couldn't get a day where all the kids could get back on the same day. So we said, let's just get them their checks so they can go to college. And so we didn't have the event last year. I think what,
Had it
Well, we
How did
did
our
have
board?
a small.
Yeah, we just did it at the board meeting, but we
Yeah.
didn't
Yeah.
do the ceremony. That
Yeah.
we
It
were
didn't
supposed
cost
to.
money.
We recognize
Yeah,
that.
and so I
Yeah.
think the thought we had this year, and it was going to be like a future discussion for this board, would be when we have the next round of applications, is do we want to just do the, 3 remaining scholarships, 3 or 4, I guess it'd be 4 remaining scholarships in a ceremony, or would we want to do 6 scholarships and not do a ceremony? But that's for a future discussion. So, but to answer the question, 4,000 spent, 6,000 remaining, but some of that technically right now, the approval includes a ceremony.
And I think some of that will depend on how many applications we get. If we get 6 great ones, it
Yep.
might be good to do what we did in the past.
Yep.
I
Give
would
the
rather
money
give
to the
money
kids, yeah,
That's my
I
thought.
mean,
Yeah.
yeah.
Instead of, yeah.
Yeah, and I thought what we did at the board
meeting.
meeting was good
Yeah.
last year.
Yeah, I think that, they enjoyed that, yeah. Police Explorers, I'll kick to you on
That's
that one.
complete. We just
Okay.
have to bill you
You just
for
have
it.
to bill, okay. Lego First is obviously happening, so we just we did the contract with Velma, so we just have to send Velma the check for that, but we had the CBF last week, and I understand it was a great day, a nice press event, and hooray, we did get a nice press release out, and the first time in a while, some really positive press on the front page of the Ventura County Star, so that was awesome.
Yeah.
So, okay. Sister program. who wants
So
to give
that, a check has just been issued to the Sister City Committee for $3,800, I believe it was. And so, like, when I say just issued, I think Mr. Martinez, who I don't know what the titles are, but I know he was the council member who was previously on the Sister City Committee, and I think he's one of the leads on the Sister City Committee now. He picked up the check at 3 p.m. yesterday. So at this point, that was the seed funding for Sister City Committee to start doing their fundraising events. So
Okay, so there's still some money left in there then after 3,800, because this is reporting 7,500, or,
there was 3,700 utilized to get the committee to be a standalone nonprofit committee. So 3,800 was what was remaining.
okay, so
of
we
the
just need,
7,500.
it's an invoicing, and this
Yeah.
one will go to
Yes.
bed. Okay,
Yes.
so this
So-
is invoicing.
So
It's
all
complete.
of that
Okay.
is now complete, and it's invoicing.
Okay. Caregivers,
That should be done.
I think Michelle did a contract for that one, and I think that one will be a matter of the port paying caregivers.
Okay, so, Madam Mayor, we're talking about fiscal year '23.
Which is 24
Not-
last year. It was spent in 24. It says 23 because it's FY '23 funds for FY '24 projects.
Okay, all right. So these down here, so these Lego First is for the next year's.
So no, the FY '24 are for now. They're FY '25 projects in process.
23 is for 24, and 24
Yeah,
is
it's
for 20.
confusing.
It's
Yeah.
so simple.
Okay.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, and maybe we should just put the year of we're spending the money as opposed to the year the money came from.
So if I can ask that
Yep.
question there further. So we said that in fiscal year '23, that the DC trip did not happen. So this 20,000 that's below here, is that new funds, or is there really a 20,000
It's new. So there's
available?
$40,000 for.
40,000 for a
Yes.
joint trip
Yeah,
available, unless we want to reprogram it somewhere else. Okay.
yes.
right.
Or it could carry over to a future DC trip and you wouldn't have to vote it again. That's
Got
an
it.
option too.
Okay.
Yeah. And then the caregivers, when we do sponsorships with third parties, there's a contract that floats that James signs, I sign, our lawyers sign, and the recipient signs, and it commits them to doing the marketing and all the criteria that we want to see as a result of being a recipient of those funds. So we have executed the contract with caregivers, so this again is a matter of payment, and then we'll just make sure, Adam, have we done, you may want to step up the CBF check signing? We did at the golf tournament this year. Yeah, so we did at the putt-putt. We had the CBF check findings.
Yes.
So this is just a matter of making sure we got the money over to
Councilwoman Perez, I think, was there.
Tammy, who got Woman of the Year, by the way. And then the City Port Community Events Swimming Beach Festival,
That was complete. It's just
an
invoicing.
invoicing issue.
Yeah.
Okay. Grant writing, we are putting our heads together on that one still, and we'll come back to you with a report. We haven't spent yet, but we're putting our thinking caps on, and we'll come to a proposal.
Yeah, that might be,
Yeah.
that might be a suggestion for one of the first big topics for this board in one of the next couple
Yeah.
meetings. Yeah.
Then, of course, the DC trip, that's a rollover, but what I will do is work with Michelle perhaps and the city clerk to come up with dates to make sure everyone's good for a timing, maybe the second week of September range, something like that, and just make sure it works. That was John's recommendation, but if we can't find a date, then we'll come back and we'll find one that's good to be in DC as well as accommodating people's schedules. Performing arts program.
I think that was the one we were trying to track down the representative of the performing arts program, and I don't think we've found it yet. I don't know if, Michelle, did you find it? For uniforms, yeah. So I don't think we tracked it down yet, but I didn't know if you guys had.
I called the school district yesterday
Okay.
and informed that we do have so many waiting for them to put us in with the right person.
Okay.
So we're just trying to find the right person to sign the contract, but we have all the contracts set, just waiting for the
Awesome.
appropriate person.
Thank you.
Thanks, Michelle.
And that wouldn't be the superintendent,
Yeah,
Christine Walker?
should be.
Yes.
So I'll have to get with Austin on Lego First Robotics, because that's on us, so I don't know why we're a year deficient there. So we'll have to make sure that Velma's getting her funding.
Eddie and I worked with Velma and Amy, and they're going to be brought up to date on this next check run.
Annual Health and Wellness Fair, we talked about that. That's
March
coming up.
22nd. Yep.
And then,
Splash Run Fund.
Splash
Yeah.
and then again, I'm going to defer to you on this one. Is this one in invoicing, or is there another Police Explorers event?
That's one that I believe it's the Police Explorers car show that is in July.
Okay.
So I think that's
It's up
what
and coming.
that one is. So yeah, it's still coming up.
So we'll do a check event, and I understand last year, we want to make sure we do a little better on some PR.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was some feedback that came out of that one. Real Guppies, again, that one's just a contract, so we'll sign up, and then we'll plan a check signing ceremony with Kevin, Brandon, on that. On the Inglikesh, same thing. We're processing the contract, and then we'll work with them on a check signing. Little League, I imagine it's the same thing. So we're just waiting on the invoicing, and then we'll set up a check signing ceremony.
No, on that one, just because the timing's right, the VC Star had an article today about the Bubbling Springs Park reopening, which is also sort of home of the Little League, and so we're looking at a date in mid-April. So we'll send that. I actually mentioned Kristen. I'll send you that date so it can be shared with the board as well. But my suggestion would be, I think that'd be a good day to do the check signing as well, with a big crowd and the whole Little League coming back home. So,
Cool.
so we'll follow up with you on that. So.
Okay, that's Charles and Adam, right? Can work on putting that together. Okay. And then lifeguard training?
That one we are gearing up for. We just started hiring lifeguards, so it'll be the next couple months.
And then on the economic development for the city, James and I had met, and we were playing with the concept of a low-hanging fruit project and wayfinding signs that would really be attractive and point people towards Port, Navy, City, and then amenities throughout the city. So
So we've met with, we're working on a couple updated signs. We're working on some updates in general. I'm going to channel our community development director, Tony Stewart, right now and say this green color that exists in this building, he's been on a mission to eradicate it from Port Hueneme. And I think this room is like the last place it's left. We're doing updated signage in general, but we wanted to do some wayfinding signage that advertises to the community, the port, the city, and some of the other cool things, the beach, other things that somebody driving by might not ever realize. We had heard from some people who said at City Hall they didn't know where the beach was, and we're like, well, if you look down the street, you can see it on most days, So the idea was doing wayfinding signage, advertising some of the jewels of our city, with the city, the port, and other amenities on there. So we we're doing this kind of sign program, and as part of that, we'll come back with some designs for wayfinding signage to this board.
And commissioners, I'm not sure if I brought you up to speed, but this was part of the economic development plan.
Right.
Yeah, yep.
Well, great, thank you. If I could make a suggestion, could we put a separate column so we know which ones already have been paid out and done? Because this was really helpful going through each
Yeah.
one. I know it was extra work.
Yeah, we'll
but-
put a status.
Are we planning to use all the $27,000 for the signage?
I think so. I think so.
Probably cost.
Signs are more expensive than you'd think, and you know, we were trying to get a new park sign for Bubbling Springs. We had a meeting on the 3 or 4 signs we're looking at, and the one quote that came back was the new just park sign for Bubbling Springs, and it's $75,000.
Oh my
So,
God.
so they're more expensive than you'd think because
Yeah, they are.
they have to be like indestructible, you know. So
So is that new signage, is it going to make us change the way our signs look
we are
within the city?
the city last year adopted a sort of updated design style, and so the idea is we are going to change the style of the city. We're going to change the colors. We actually just sort of started phase 1, and if anybody goes by Bubbling Springs Park, you'll notice that the old green posts that used to be in the park, they're now a different color, and that's like we're using that as like the test area and kind of get people's feedback. But we're changing that. The signs that the old green posts with the wooden sign on them, those are going to be kind of getting updated on a project by project basis. Again, it would be nice to be able to just do all the new signs, but we're talking millions of dollars for everything in the city. So we'll be doing kind of project by project. So we are planning to update the city's style and the city's sign program, and then we just thought like wayfinding signage that shows the city and the port would be kind of a cool first step as part of community benefit fund. So.
So that brings us up to where we are, and then, of course, the fiscal year will end on
June 30th.
June 30, and I believe my CFO can confirm that we're going to make more than $13 million. We're certainly hoping that to be true. So we will have 100,000 plus CPI to start talking about, and usually that May timeframe is a good time to initiate the discussions, but always can encourage you to, and myself to, our boards can talk about this in our boardrooms and bring ideas forward. So
If I may, the annual contribution to CBF started from $100,000 per year, but over the years, CPI was added on. So 2025, we estimated about $140,000.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
I would just recommend that if you haven't had an opportunity to read the 2015 settlement agreement, please do. It outlines in a comprehensive way, and some of the intent may not come through there, which be happy to talk to you about intent. There's what I have found is that there may be a semantical discussion about community benefit fund, and the idea was that we wanted the two boards to work together in a fun way. And so that's the community we talk about, is the city and the port. And so the two boards is the community we've talked about. It's kind of gone in a different pathway in the recent years. And so I just recently went back and reread it again just to make sure that I'm on the right page here. And so in that agreement, it talks about if the project or two don't happen to go through, and I was like, oh, well, we were thinking about 1 or 2 projects, not a laundry list, kind of things. And so it's kind of maneuvered over time, to a longer list than what, 1 or 2 projects that we were thinking about. So, but just, if you get a chance to read it, please do.
Yeah, I think we've got a deep dive into that recently, so, yeah.
Okay.
And so I think you're absolutely correct in the semantics, or I'd say semantics, but the translation
Yes,
of it.
yes.
And I think we're really close about what that's supposed to mean. So.
Yeah. Well, I think Kristen and I were probably the only people around when this happens, so. In Austin too, yeah. So, you know, we can bring that history and that experience to answer any questions that you may have.
Yeah, thank you for that.
Sure.
I agree with you, because if you look at the 4 key points, shoreline protection, community development, opportunistic endeavors, it seems like all this fell under other.
It is, and that's what it's just morphed into this.
Mhm.
Anything else? Any other comments?
No, this was very helpful. Thank you for breaking it down.
Great. So, so we've had some discussion and we've come up with some recommendations. And so, did we need to take a vote on this, or are we good with the
Nope,
recommendations?
it's
that we have?
receive and file, and
Great.
then just start thinking for our next meeting.
Great.
So.
Thank you. We'll go on to number 3 then, the Washington annual lobbying trip. And so we will turn that over to Ms. Deacus. Will you please lead us?
Yeah, so I touched on it briefly, but we have consultants that serve the port, and they graciously assist us when we go on a DC trip, and they'll set up all the meetings. So if we're looking to go maybe the second week of September, we could start, if we decide a date, and then can really start thinking about the agencies we'd like to hit. We had a great meeting with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers in the first round, and I think that's certainly a place we're going to want to hit, given what happened this year with the dredging. And I would like to share that I'm going on a trip for the Association of Port Authorities meeting, the APA, the American Association of Port Authorities meeting, and our consultants are setting up a meeting with the Corps, and I'm just going to take the opportunity of being in Washington to advocate for our project there, and yeah, to make sure I'll fight for the October, restart, because we're a million cubic yards shy. So just since I'm on the Hill and there, I'm happy to advocate for the project with
Yeah,
the
that's
Corps.
great,
So
thank
do that. And I know Letitia recently was with CMANC, and I think Michael Tripp was there, as well as Todd chairs that. Michael's out of the Ventura Harbor, and they were also driving in the importance of this project while they were running around the Washington, D.C. area too. So, but anyways, obviously that's a good one. It's a very important project to all of us. It's the integrity of the port. It's the integrity of your beach. And of course, it's very important to the marina so that it doesn't fill up with sand, and the marina's still operational. So it's really a very important 3-way project and a great opportunity to collaborate. But what we had done at the past meeting is we put together some proposed agencies to meet with, and then John and Kyriakos will set up all these meetings in Washington's, and then they have drivers that we use, and we'll use the CBF funding to say that they'll get us around to all the different meetings, and they'll set up dinners and all that good stuff. So it's just really a great meeting to go advocate on joint efforts. We went to the EPA together too, because there's areas that we could have joint projects for environmental improvements in our community, as well as, I think we went to the MARAD even. We went to the U.S. Maritime Administration, and we went to the Department of Defense to learn about ways to collaborate with our partner in the military. So there's just a lot of opportunity, and we'll make some recommendations, bring them back here for your consumption, and then move forward with setting some things up.
Madam
Yeah.
Mayor? So I would just like to say a few things about this trip. And there's great value in everybody going on this trip together. And we've been in DC before, and they go, well, where's the city sit on this? And we're like, yeah, city, it'd be great to have the city in the room, right? So they've asked us, how's the city sit? Where's the county sit? And so having everybody in the room to discuss the items is really beneficial for your voice to be heard there. And it shows the strength of the locality to move projects forward. So they want to make sure that if they're going to invest money, that everything's in a row here. So this is a really great way, I think, of the use of the CBF money to benefit both agencies and the area. And just to be very clear, I mean, we support the sand replenishment. I mean, it benefits everybody. So I know that you have a council member now who's made some comments in the public about this, and we support it. I mean, and we want to make sure that it happens too. So, I mean, we're all in this together, and to go, hand in hand back to the Army Corps to say, look, we need this here, and live up to your responsibility, because it's their responsibility to do that. So I think we could put a little bit more pressure, on them to move forward, and then we stay on top of them to do that too. So, this is really, I appreciate the city. It was like 2 years ago, I think, was the first trip, joint trip back, which I think is extremely
James was
beneficial
on the
and
job a
helpful.
week.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
Let's go to DC.
He was awesome, though.
Yeah.
And we've got strong representation in our Congress, for the port, between
Yeah.
Congresswoman Brownlee and Congressman Carbajal. So, I mean, it's really it's a great way for us to work together. So I'd like to see us continue that, to move forward and to make that a priority.
Commissioner, if I may add to that too, having the support of the city when we were talking about the FEMA grants that we were failing to receive, after that, we got a very nice award of $750,000. So the advocacy does,
It pays off.
it brings results, and the collaboration makes it even better.
Yeah.
So I'll just make this comment so that everything is clear. We are a body, we are a council of 5 people.
Mayor.
And so please remember that,
Yes.
okay, that we are a body of 5 people.
Yes.
And so I understand the importance, and matter of fact, I'll be heading out with the Regional Defense Partnership with Commissioner Zacharias
That lady.
in a couple of weeks. And so, any opportunity that we get to advocate for our city and our city partners, we're committed to doing that, I believe.
Yep. And I would just note that I think it's easy to focus on, the negative or what didn't happen. And, when people say like, well, the dredge, we're only getting half of what we were supposed to get at this point. Well, obviously we're all still working on trying to make sure that it comes back in October and that we get all that we're supposed to get. But also, I honestly think if we didn't build these relationships and if we didn't already have utilized these, we wouldn't have gotten any sand this year. And there was I believe there was a project right before us that didn't get any sand, and we jumped on it and were able to get them here and get a million cubic yards. So we're still working on it, but it's easy to just say well, it wasn't enough, but I think the partnership between the city and the port is what made this happen this year. So.
Mayor, if I could also make a comment. I thought the last city port trip was very valuable. I thought we met with some very important agencies that brought to light a lot of funding opportunities for the city. I don't know if anybody walked away to do any additional research from the city side, but I want to make sure that it's not just about the port. This is a city port trip. So we want to know what your priorities are. We want to know, white paper on, I don't know, Bubbling Springs Park. Because actually, Bubbling Springs Park came up as one that there was grant funding for that. But once again, we'll hopefully have the grant writer in place to be able to follow up on this.
Sure.
But it's not just a port-driven trip. It's a port and a city-driven trip with priorities for both projects that we feel we want to move forward. And that, I think, is really important, that the folks understand that it's not just about the port's priorities. We're a partner, we're a key stakeholder, partner of yours here in the city of Port Hueneme, just like the military bases. And that's why I think it's valuable. I'm heading out with the mayor to the RDP, because the RDP, the different commands, have a lot of internship opportunities. So they're a valuable stakeholder of the university. So same here, is they're a valuable stakeholder of the city of Port Hueneme, as well as the port is.
Yeah, and I think that there's a uniqueness about having a port next to the city, right? Because we can apply for funding that you can't get if you don't have a port, right? So, for example, the overpass that just, over the railroad that's on Fifth Street, the majority of that money came through the trade corridor grant. So without the port being here to say, hey, this is for trade and the trade corridor, $80 million wouldn't have come down this way. And so we've worked together with county sheriff and a lot of different agencies, the city of Oxnard, to do license plate readers. And, over the course of time, there's been a lot of grant opportunities where we try to bring our partners in for that. And so that's where, you know, Moorpark goes, well, we want to connect with that. Well, you know, sorry, but yeah, Wainimi's right here. So there's a way, so if we understand what your priorities are and how we can leverage those into grant writing opportunities to get more funding coming in, we are all about that. And innovation, you know, come up with a great idea. I mean, we like innovation, so it keeps us nimble.
I think we got about $2 million in FEMA grants that supported, throughout the period of the FEMA grants that support city infrastructure, including your fiber optics. Yeah, so there's a lot of win-wins out there.
So that second week, is that the week of September 8th? Is that what you
Yeah,
guys are thinking?
John recommended 1 or 2 weeks after Labor Day. When's Labor Day this year? Does anybody know?
September 1st, which is the first Monday. Yeah.
So the
And,
week of the 8th might not be bad.
Yeah, and the week after that, we have a council meeting. The week before that, we have a council meeting. So from just a purely council meeting level, that's a good week to do it. But obviously, I think everybody will need to check their own schedules. So.
Okay, so we'll have Michelle and the city clerk follow up with you to make sure that week would work. We'll find a
Yeah.
couple days if that can be doable, because I think that sounds like a good time to go. It's
Yeah.
well in advance of the Banana Fest,
Mm-hmm.
so,
Yeah, at
Yeah.
first glance, that looks pretty good, actually.
Yeah.
So.
okay.
Week of the 8th.
Week of the 8th. Yeah, we usually do a 2-dayer. So it's 2 days of meetings.
Yeah, it's like
Yeah.
travel there
2 days.
Monday.
And be
then
ready. Put your walking
meetings
shoes
Tuesday,
on.
Wednesday, I think. And fly back Thursday.
I think it's interesting because I go to DC often and they think, oh, you go out and have fun. You realize I'm exhausted by the end
It's
of the
exhausting,
day.
yeah.
You try to jam in as much as you possibly
7:30 a.m. to 7:30 p.m.
Exactly.
And you're lucky if you get something to eat in between.
Yeah, yeah.
That's why you always carry it
Yeah.
in your bag.
Yeah, snack bars. or
Snacks
whatever.
and comfortable shoes.
And I think James would attest, having been there last year, that John and Kiriakis are very good at what they do. Yeah, and
Yeah.
getting meetings and logistics set up.
Yep.
All right. Anything else regarding the trip? So that's our last item.
Michelle?
We are ready to adjourn, but before we do that, let's talk a little bit about our next meeting, maybe a good schedule for that, and
Oh, yeah.
calendar it.
Yeah, and I think, so on our end, I think a few of us aren't available that last week of March. So I think the question would be, do we want to set another date for a meeting in March? Or is this the meeting in March and we meet again in April, or what is the
Well,
preference?
from what I heard, it sounds like May is going to be kind of the
Kind of
initial conversation of next fiscal year's projects. So I'm wondering, do we want to push back and wait till May? Or do you think we have some work we need to do in April?
You know what? I think we've been a little sporadic in our meetings, and it was our desire to get on a schedule so that
regular.
we meet all the time and we can have things scheduled so we know that
Sure.
that date is not available when things come up.
Okay.
And so if we can
Oh,
try to stay on
So you're the regular schedule.
the regular
Which
schedule.
I think we
Third
had
Wednesday was the,
You
I
did?
think we
What
had
did we agree on?
the last
I think
Wednesday.
for the last year, it was the 4th Wednesday at 3:30.
I,
So does that still work?
so
Oh,
I
I've got
do
it on my
agree with the mayor is that last Wednesday, wait, in April, no, in March.
March, it says the 26th.
We're both in DC.
Yeah, that's why I think,
That's
so,
why we, yeah.
so I guess this could be the March meeting, and then starting in April, 4th Wednesday, yeah, and
the
just go
fourth
back to
Wednesday in April.
the standard.
That would be the 30th.
23rd?
Commissioner of
Yeah, I just
April.
can't do it in
It'd be the
June.
23rd.
So, yeah,
April 23rd.
April 23rd. It's on our
April
calendar
23rd.
already.
Okay.
Okay, great.
Okay, April
April
23rd.
23rd.
And so we're looking at the fourth Wednesdays.
Yes.
Okay.
I think
I'd
we
maybe
were-
gone
We
in
were
May
trying to
and
do
June.
that last
Yes.
year because
Yeah.
we wanted to get, just try to understand
Routine.
everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll try at that meeting, have all of this, what should get reconciled, and we'll add a status to it and on this piece of the CBF as well.
Yeah, and I
So an
think
agenda
if
item.
if it's not an overloaded agenda, potentially talking about, starting to think about topics for the DC trip.
Yeah.
too.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, cool.
If there is nothing else, we'll go ahead and adjourn this meeting today at 4:20.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Tea time.